Because I run these Show Me Your Rig video series, I get to take a look at a lot of awful photos of really nice systems. Sometimes they're blurry, sometimes they're framed wrong, sometimes there's a flash and a glare. There's all kinds of things that can go wrong when you're taking what amounts to product photography. What I want to do here is a how-to video on how to photograph your PC. And a lot of the lessons here are going to apply not only to this, but just to photography in general. And what I want to do is I want to do it all with just a smartphone. Ready to dive into custom water cooling but unclear about what parts you might need? Check out Thermaltake's new M360 Plus RGB kit. Featuring a D5 pump res combo, 16mm hard tube, Pacific C Pro fittings, and the best RGB implementation on the market, the M360 Plus fits all mainstream Intel and AMD sockets and is fully expandable as your system evolves. Check out the link in the video description to learn more. The other day on Twitter, when I was going through the most recent round of Show Me Your Rig entries, I decided to put up a poll, and you guys overwhelmingly wanted me to do a video like this where I show you guys the proper way to take photos of your system. Now just keep in mind that a lot of the lessons that we go over here are applicable to other areas of life. You always have your cell phone with you basically, and you're always taking photos with it. And that doesn't mean that the things that we talk about here can't only be applied to sitting at your computer desk taking photos of your PC. Feel free to use this elsewhere because a lot of this knowledge is fairly general and applies to more than one subject. Now, the reason that I'm only going to be using a cell phone here is because it would be pretty silly of me to do a tutorial on how to photograph your system using a professional grade camera. Most people don't have a professional grade camera. They also don't have professional editing software. So everything we do today is going to be based around the fact that most people now have a good enough camera that they carry around in their pockets all the time. So this is all going to be what amounts to free, or at least no more expensive than what you've already laid out for your iPhone or for your Android phone. I've broken this down into 10 separate elements. And the first one, no flash. You don't need a flash when doing photography of your computer. You could certainly find other ways to light your subject that don't involve a bright, sudden flash of light. The problem with flashes when you do product photography, and specifically PC photography, is number one, if you happen to have the side panel on, that's instant glare. Usually when there's glare in an image coming off of glass like this, or even acrylic, you can't see what's behind it. A flash is also going to expose things like micro scratches on acrylic windows or on plastic side pieces of your case, and you don't really want that. Also, if you happen to have the side panel off and you're taking a photo inside the chassis, generally that's pretty dark. And if you suddenly hit it with all this light, your exposure settings that the camera inside your phone has dialed in are suddenly going to be completely thrown off, and your image is likely to be blown out. So just shut the flash off, work with either natural light from a window, a lamp that you can move over, an overhead light, some kind of light that is not sudden and artificial like it would be from the flash on your camera. Number two is frame your image or your subject correctly. This means that if you have to pull back a little bit to get all elements of, let's say, your PC case into the frame, pull back a little bit. Even if that means that it looks like the sides are going to be pushed out too far and you're going to end up with too small of a subject inside too large of a frame, you can very easily crop this image later. You want to make sure that you have all the corners of your case inside the photo, because if you're cutting off the top or the bottom or the edge or something like that, you're getting an incomplete view of your subject. Make sure that you're framing everything up so that everything that you want to be able to see is in that frame, no matter how far away or how close you need to get, and then crop it later. Number three, and this is something that is pretty important when it comes to all photography. Generally, what you want to do is expose your image for the brightest part of what you are shooting. In the case of computers, something like this, what you want to expose for is any lights that are on the inside. So make sure that you're focusing on, say, the memory dims, or if you have an LED fan or something like that. It doesn't matter that the image looks darker this way, because if you expose for the dark part of an image, the camera is going to compensate by blowing out all of the highlights, because it's going to try to expose that dark part, and as a result it's going to crank up your ISO, and you're going to end up with a giant mess with absolutely no detail that you can recover later. If you expose for the bright part of the image, all of those details are actually still captured in the photo. You can then go in later, manipulate the exposure, increase the brightness on certain parts of your image, and then make sure that you can expose different parts the way you want to. If you have blown out highlights, they're gone forever. You cannot recover those. Number 4, I'm okay with leaving the side panel on if you want to take a far away shot of the overall system. But if you're looking at your build from this side and you want to take an interior shot of like the motherboard tray area, get that side panel off. Any reflections coming off there are going to cause lens flare, and you won't be able to really see what you're focusing on inside. It's just a much clearer image if you get rid of that side panel entirely before you take that side shot. Number 5, it is tempting to take photos in dark rooms, especially if you have a system even like this with fairly minimal lighting going on. The lighting effects in computers these days, like RGB effects and fans and lighting strips and memory and motherboards and graphics cards and coolers and cases and basically everything, make these systems look really cool. So it's tempting to try to take a photo of them in the dark when you can most clearly see all of the colors when you're looking at it with your eyes. But when you look at it with a camera, we run into some issues. Again, like we talked about before, it's a question of exposure. And when you have a very dark room and you're looking at a case with a camera, the camera sees an LED fan that's completely bright and a spot on your motherboard with no LEDs on it at all that is completely dark, and can't decide how it wants to expose the image. You could focus on the bright part of the image and completely lose any detail that's in the dark part of the image because there's not enough ambient light to balance it out, or you could focus on the dark part of the image and the LED fan that you have is just going to completely blow out the entire picture. So it's tempting because it looks really cool to your eyes in a dark room, but to a camera, that's not the ideal situation to take a photo. Try not to take photos with no lights on around your system. Number 6, when it comes to this kind of photography, there are only 3 types of shots. There's the wide, the medium, and the detail. The wide shot's going to be your entire system photo, and I suggest that you start here. It tells a story if you start far away and work your way in, especially if you're sending them to somebody to say, hey, check out my system. If you start with just a close-up of your 24-pin cable, I might not even know what I'm looking at. Start far away and work your way in. Take your wide shots first, take your overalls, take this corner shot, take the front shot, take the side shot, then work your way in. Take a shot of your motherboard area, take a shot maybe of the power supply shroud, of your cable management, something like that, and then go in for the details. Take a shot of how you routed your 24-pin cable. Take a shot of how your GPU lights up, or how your memory looks, or the cooler on your CPU. Wide, then medium, then detail. It tells a story if it flows that way. Number 7. If you have a lot of shake or blur to your images after you're taking them and you can't figure out why, it might be because maybe the camera on your cell phone doesn't happen to be the best. The way to alleviate this is to prop up your elbows on something or your arms to steady your shot. When I'm taking night photography, no matter where I am or no matter what I'm taking photos with, I never hold my camera up like this, freehand in the air, because even the tiniest bit of movement is going to cause blur, because with darker shots the shutter actually has to stay open longer, and the longer it stays open, the more prone it is to pick up those tiny movements and transmit it to the sensor, which then writes the image, and that's what you end up seeing, a blurry mess. Rest your arms on something. Rest your arms on a table, on a chair, on some books, something like that to steady your shot, and then take your photo after that. Number 8, be creative with your angles. Now, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't include these standard shots, the front, the side, maybe the front corner, pictures of your memory or your graphics card or something like that. But it's also important to stand out by taking varied angles and being creative with how those images look. Maybe I've never seen an angle of your graphics card from below or from the corner. Maybe I've never seen a full-on shot of your case from this bottom corner looking up and to the left. Just be creative. Think of different ways you can shoot the same subject. Look at it from 360 degrees. Don't just say, I can only do the front and the side shot, and that's really all it is. It's just a computer. These things are full of interesting angles, crevices, nooks, and crannies that you could get into with your camera, with your phone, especially something like this that's so small. You could put this inside in different spaces. You can make sure that the angles you're shooting are new and different. Now, granted, I guess there is a finite number of angles and shots that you can get with a computer, but I guarantee that I haven't seen all of them. Make sure that you're exploring all those avenues if you want your photography to be noticed. Number 9, there is a saying in photography: don't zoom with your lens, zoom with your feet. And this applies especially when it comes to products that do not have an optical zoom. Most cell phone cameras only have digital zooms. And when you digitally zoom into a photo, you're basically just going to expose all the pixels that nobody wants to see. Don't use digital zoom. Zoom with your feet. That means get closer to something to take that photo. Don't take it from further away and just pinch in and use that digital zoom. The photo quality is nowhere near as good. Move closer, especially when you're dealing with something like this that's a stationary object that you can just turn and literally move your phone closer to. Don't use digital zoom almost ever. And number 10, digital photos are free and basically unlimited. I understand storage space is a thing sometimes, but when it comes to taking photos of your PC, don't take 3 and say, these are good enough, and send them away. Take 100 photos. Take 200 photos. It doesn't matter. I know I don't want to see 200 photos in my email, but if you are trying to get on a show like Show Me a Rig, or trying to post your photos to a Facebook group, or post them on Twitter, or somewhere where people will notice them, you want the best quality photos. Take a bunch, take from all different angles, take all different lighting situations, take a lot of photos, load them onto your PC, look at them on a bigger screen, because that's how I'm going to look at them, on this screen. Figure out which ones are the best, which ones are maybe a little blurry or need some color correction or something like that, and then pick the best ones out of that. There's no point in just taking 5 photos of your PC and assuming that they're all good, because to be honest with you, they're likely not. I take photos of my systems and other products all the time, and most of the time, to be honest with you, I'm taking 10 photos before I post one on Twitter to make sure that I get it right. And you can do that too. So that is my brief primer on how to do PC photography. If you guys found it interesting, feel free to drop a like down there, get subscribed to the channel if you are not already, and leave some questions or comments down below, and I'll take a look and try to answer anything else that might come up that you guys would want to know about doing these kinds of shots. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.